James burst into tears. His eyes were red and swollen, tears streaming down uncontrollably as he received the news. Diêp had vanished. Just that morning, she was still smiling beside him, her gaze gentle like the spring breeze. And now, in just a fleeting moment, she was gone. James could hardly believe his ears when John's men informed him that they had chased after Diêp, determined to capture her at any cost. Without hesitation, James ran, panic taking over his every step. He didn't care about the dangers of the deep forest or the world collapsing around him. There was only one thought in his mind: I have to find Diêp. But when he arrived, there was nothing but a cold, empty space. No sign of life, no footprints, no sound other than the rustling leaves in the wind. James stood frozen, his chest tight. He could no longer hear anything, could no longer see anything, as if the whole world had fallen into silence. The sky was gray, the air was heavy, time seemed to stop. James cried out into the forest, his voice breaking with despair. Diêp, where are you? Please, answer me. There was no reply. Only the echo of his own voice returned, lonely and hollow. James dropped to his knees, his heart plunging into a bottomless pit, suffocated by a whirlwind of emotions: rage, helplessness, sorrow, and fear. 100 questions swirled in his mind. Was Diêp hurt? Was someone holding her captive? Was she scared, crying his name the same way he was calling hers? He didn't know, but there was one thing he was sure of. He would not stop. Not while Diêp was still out there, alone and in danger. James's journey was no longer just about saving Diêp. It was a battle against his enemies, against fate, and against the fear consuming his heart. Will James be able to find Diêp amidst the overwhelming darkness, or will they be lost to each other forever in this cruel, twisted world? Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next heart-pounding twists, where the secrets unfold and love finds its way through the chaos. James wouldn't give up. He couldn't give up. Deep within the dense forest, faint light filtered through the thick canopy above. James pressed forward, each step filled with determination, yet weighed down by an overwhelming sense of dread. Every breath burned in his chest, his throat dry and raw, but still he shouted, Diêp, where are you? Please answer me. His voice echoed through the vast, silent wilderness, then faded into nothingness. The rustling leaves whispered softly, as if offering sympathy. A nearby brook trickled gently, like it too was crying with James, a sad, haunted melody that mirrored his pain. James scanned his surroundings. Every branch, every shadow, every unfamiliar sound stirred a flicker of hope in his heart. Then, behind a large rock in the distance, he saw a figure curled up tightly, a small body trembling, whether from cold or fear, he didn't know. But the moment James stepped closer, his heart nearly leapt out of his chest. It was Diêp. The woman he loved sat huddled there, her clothes muddy, her hair tangled, her face gaunt and filled with terror. She looked like a lost child stranded in an unfamiliar world. James nearly broke down. He rushed to her, arms wide, desperate to hold her, as if any second lost would mean losing her forever. Diêp, it's me. It's James. I'm here now. Everything's okay. But then, something unexpected happened. Diêp screamed and shoved him away forcefully. Her eyes widened in panic, wild and confused, as if James were a dangerous stranger. She backed against the rock, sobbing, shouting, "Don't come near me! Who are you? Stay away!" James froze. He stood there, motionless, like all life had been drained from him. He looked into her eyes, the eyes of his wife, but she looked back at him as though she'd never seen him before. Her fear stabbed through him like a blade, but he didn't get angry. He didn't run. He didn't even cry. He slowly sat down a short distance away, keeping a safe space between them, his voice gentle and warm. The same voice she once said made her feel at home. "It's me, James. Don't you remember? We've been through so much together. I'm your husband, Diep. I would never hurt you." Diep stared at him, her eyes filled with doubt and confusion. Her lips quivered, trying to form words, but none came. She clutched her head, her gaze growing distant. Something stirred deep inside her. A faint memory, a familiar sound, or maybe just the echo of a forgotten warmth. James struggled to contain his emotions. It felt like 1,000 knives tearing through his chest. He wanted to hold her, to scream, to curse the heavens for letting this happen, for letting the woman he loved so deeply forget him. But he didn't. He understood. Diep was terrified. She had endured something horrible. Maybe it was the trauma of being hunted. Maybe she'd been imprisoned, threatened. Or maybe John had done something far worse. "It's okay," James whispered. "Even if you've forgotten me, I'll start over. I'll fall in love with you again, from this very moment, right here in this forest." He reached into his pocket and gently pulled out a handkerchief, the one Diep had given him on their anniversary. He placed it beside her, then quietly stepped back. "If you're scared, I won't come closer, but I'll be right here, waiting for you to remember who I am." A soft breeze stirred the forest. Golden leaves drifted down like pieces of scattered memories. Diep stared at the handkerchief. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Slowly, her trembling hand reached out, touching the small familiar object, as if touching a memory long buried. James tried to be gentle, leading Diep back to their home, hoping that familiar surroundings, the objects they once cherished, and the memories they left behind would awaken something inside her. The handkerchief still lay there, resting on the ground covered in fallen leaves. Diep reached out and touched it, as if she had just opened a door long sealed by time. A still moment passed. The wind stopped. The forest held its breath. James remained seated at a safe distance. He didn't dare move suddenly, didn't dare speak more than needed, afraid that even a single wrong word would push Diep further into fear. But inside him, a small flame of hope flickered, tiny, fragile, but enough for him to hold on to. Diep stared at the handkerchief. Her eyes lingered on it. Her trembling hand clutched the little item tightly. Then, her voice came, soft as a falling leaf. "Is this mine?" James gave a slight nod, his eyes never leaving her. "Yes. You embroidered it yourself, on our 1-year anniversary." Diep furrowed her brow. Fleeting images passed through her mind. An old porch, someone's smile, the sound of a guitar. She frowned deeper, as though trying to pull a thread of memory from a dense fog clouding her thoughts. "Can you tell me about us?" she asked, her voice still unsure, but no longer filled with panic. James didn't answer immediately. He smiled, a smile that was both joyful and pained, and then began to speak. He told her about the day they first met, when she got lost in a heavy downpour and James, a stranger then, shared his umbrella with her. He told her about their first silly argument over whether to eat pho or bun bo. about the night they rode through the dark just to watch the sunrise from the mountain top. You once said, if one day you ever lost yourself, I'd be the one to bring you back. Diep looked at him, hesitating. That sounds like something I would say. They both chuckled, lightly but genuinely. In the days that followed, James built a small shelter by the stream, a quiet, safe place, easy to return to. He didn't pressure her to remember. He didn't rush her. He simply stayed close like a loyal companion. Each morning, he made her warm tea. Each night, he told stories, sometimes silly memories they had shared, sometimes the painful ones that still stung. He took her on walks through the forest, picked wildflowers she once loved. He played the song she used to hum, and each time Diep looked at him with that puzzled gaze, he would simply smile and say, "It's okay. We'll take our time. I'm not in a hurry." Slowly, tiny fragments of memory began to return. A familiar song made her cry without knowing why. A faint scent in the air made her pause and close her eyes. Once, when James slipped and fell, she rushed to help, crying out, "Are you okay?" Then froze in shock as she realized she had called him "Ah," with a tone that came not from thought, but from the heart. James gently took her hand. "You're still in there. I knew it." One quiet afternoon, Diep sat by the stream, holding the old handkerchief. She turned to James and softly asked, like a breeze passing through the trees, "Did I used to love you very much?" James didn't answer right away. He looked into her eyes, then nodded. "And you still do. You've just forgotten for a little while." Diep smiled, not certain, but no longer afraid. Their journey wasn't over. Diep hadn't remembered everything, but each day with James was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. There was no need to rush, no need for perfection, as long as they had each other. Will Diep fully recover her memories of the past? Or is there a deeper truth buried in the parts of her memory still locked away? John hasn't vanished, and a new plan is quietly taking shape in the shadows. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, where love must face memory, darkness, and a life or death decision.
Hành trình của James và Diệp vẫn chưa kết thúc. Diệp chưa nhớ lại tất cả, nhưng mỗi ngày bên James là một mảnh ghép được đặt đúng chỗ. Không cần vội, không cần hoàn hảo, chỉ cần có nhau, để Diệp sẽ nhớ lại hoàn toàn ký ức xưa, hay một bí mật lớn đang chôn giấu trong phần ký ức mà cô chưa chạm tới. John vẫn chưa biến mất, một âm mưu mới đang dần hình thành trong bóng tối. Đừng quên ấn đăng ký và bật chuông để không bỏ lỡ phần tiếp theo của hành trình, nơi tình yêu phải đối mặt với ký ức, bóng tối và sự sinh tử.